guys, what's up? Thank you so much for watching Mostly Sane. I'm Prajakta. Welcome back to another Real Talk Tuesday video. I feel like I just keep upping my game up with Real Talk Tuesday. I mean, obviously, it's not all credit to me, but to credit to everybody who agrees to come and talk to me about this on my YouTube channel. But I have someone with me whom I've been trying to get in touch with and have this conversation with for more than 3 years now. So I'm very glad that I get to sit here and talk to Anoushka Shankar. Hi.
I'm so glad to be sat here talking to you.
Really?
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this across this 3 years that we've been talking.
It was a couple of conversations where we were like, okay, now it's going to happen.
It was so close, right?
Yeah, it was so close. How have you been?
I've been well.
You looked gorgeous last night. You look gorgeous right now. Oh
man.
my God. How was that?
Thank you. It's hard to end a night like that.
Right?
Like you get dressed up in like that kind of dress.
Yeah.
And I just felt so magical. So
When did you
beautiful.
finally convince yourself to get out of the dress?
About 4:38 a.m.
What were you doing then?
Well, I was sitting with like a couple of friends still that we were like the last stragglers. We did like a late night burger, 3 a.m. vibe.
Oh,
and
you
it was
did?
like, It was like, we were like, I'm hungry. You know? So like sit down, ate in the dress very carefully, of course. And then it was like, you know what? I think we kind of have to.
It's done now.
But it still took like ages.
Yeah.
And in the end, I was just on my own, like staring at these beautiful sequins on my dress.
How do you
just-
not stop looking at something? Everybody. I was in my pajamas in my home, going through Instagram, going through all the pap pages, and then I saw your Instagram, and I was just like,
Yeah.
you're with the Bridgerton girls.
It felt very special, the whole thing. I mean, there's just something about having Dior be here, having it be these beautiful models at that gorgeous location, that craftsmanship. I've just never seen that spotlit that same way, where it's like made in India. These are the people, these are the faces of the people.
They worked with Chanakya, didn't they? Yeah,
exactly.
The school.
But it's like, you know, all the high-end brands have been getting work done in India the whole time. But to see it like just credited and elevated in that, it just felt
And it was a beautiful day. It was a great night,
Stunning.
honestly. I mean, it was one of those days when, I had a couple of friends who were there and they were like, we didn't sweat. Mumbai weather did not disappoint. It was great. So it all came together very, very well. I'm very happy.
A successful night.
Yeah, it was good. But we are very happy to have you here finally.
Thank you.
Obviously, I mean, it's just pointless to even try to introduce you. I don't think I can do that and give enough justice to the fact that your work has been iconic in more ways than one. You started very, very early. You were 8? How old
When I
were you?
started learning and playing, I was
You were
7, 8. Yeah.
And you performed for the first time when you were
13 was my first like big proper show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll just give you some context. A lot of my viewers are young, okay? Like a lot
So
of
they won't know who I am.
no, that's not what I meant. What I meant was that a lot of young people, especially when they're 13 or 14, kind of are in a place where they're like, you know, we're passionate about this, but like, I don't know if that's the way to go or which way should we go about it. And for someone like you, who came from a place of so much knowledge, which in the field that you're in, you started super, super young. Did your passion for your music come from the fact that you grew up watching it and you grew up listening it and that's what you knew?
Yeah.
Or did it come from a place of, like, this is what I was meant to do?
Okay, that's such a hard question to answer, actually, even though it's such a key question, because it was just my life as well. So I don't have like an alternate to
You didn't know
to compare.
Okay.
But I have to say both, because I think that the thing about if you're an artist that has been raised in a family of artists, is it normalizes and legitimizes that as a job as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I was surrounded by musicians. I was surrounded by dancers. I was surrounded by artists. So I think many kids, especially many young people, have creative passions.
Yeah.
It's just we are creative beings as humans, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas so often it's maybe presented or brought into a kid's life as a hobby, right? Because like maybe the family setup or whatever is more about other things, and then creativity is on the side.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're raised in a family of musicians like I was, creativity is the key, it's the core. So it just normalizes it. So if you have the passion, that's the first thought is, oh yeah, maybe she does actually feel like being a musician. So right from the beginning, you're supported. That's given all the legitimacy. So the passion came with the upbringing.
Did you ever have a time where you were like, what if I'm not as good?
100%. What
Like,
if I'm not
I
as
don't
good?
fit into the family?
Yeah, what if I'm not as good? What if I'm not going to make it? What if there was something else out there for me that if I was looking more actively for something else, there would be something.
Was that a thought?
That's more every step of the way.
Okay.
Every step of the way. Like there was still, it's not like I I wasn't one of those people that was born just knowing 100% that's what I wanted to do. I loved it. It was a passion. I also had a talent for it, and I had the opportunity. Like that opportunity meant I started performing and touring as a teenager. So even all the way through being a teenager, right till I graduated high school, I think that was probably the turning point. Like finishing school at 18 and having to make a choice. Like, do I now, instead of touring part-time as a student, do I move into touring full-time? Like my manager was ready to book a tour. Or do I say wait because I'm going to go to university? And so that was like a real like fork in the road moment where I was like, I'm going to tour.
What did
you know? I never went to college. I never went to university. I just finished high school and I started touring.
Like a lot of people want to be musicians. What is something about being a musician that nobody tells you?
Yeah, in the good and the bad ways. There is a certain type of electric joy and passion that comes from being on stage, which is not just about the audience, it's about the relationship with the other musicians. Like for me, that relationship of being on stage creating with people is like nothing else. Well, there's a couple things maybe, but like, but just that deep interaction and intimacy and fire with people, and you just get to get up there and do that every night and play and just experience that kind of beauty and chemistry. I cannot describe how magical that is. Like, if you ever see those shows where you think that looks incredible, it is that incredible. You know?
Do you ever get nervous in the wings?
Yes.
Yeah? How
yes,
do you do
I have
that?
like a 5-minute thing before every show where I just feel like I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, same. But do you go though? The question is, do you go?
Yeah, like
you know,
it's very
I don't.
clearly timed. I time like my
Really?
pre-stage. If I don't, it's just in my head the whole,
So I could go to the bathroom and then I'm standing in the wings and then I will have to go and I feel
if
like...
shows run late, I get really irritated because in my head I'm like, oh, I didn't, that
this
hasn't
wasn't
been...
timed. This wasn't accounted for. But I tell myself that I should hold it in.
Yeah, no.
But I've, every time I've performed when I have not gone immediately before, it's done better.
Oh, see, that's what our heads do, right?
Yeah.
If this worked that time, then I have to do it every time. So I have like a little like build up towards a show in the way that I get ready, and I like to kind of do the same thing.
What is
every time? Just the process, whatever it is. Like I love to be with my band, sound check, dinner, hang, laugh, and then I say goodbye, and I want that little bit of quiet time. I do my own hair and makeup for shows, and so that's like the bit of time where I get to be alone. And it's just like calming, centering. Then I have to warm up and like play and get gig ready, and then it's like all is good. Sometimes things have run late or you're touring and there's no time for that stuff, and it takes a little bit more for me to feel
centered.
Like,
As someone who's a fan who will always be on this side watching you, is there one thing about being on stage that has stayed constant?
It's hard to answer that question casually, to be honest,
because
I think if you're asking what's been constant, then the only thing I can say has been constant is some kind of a spiritual connect that happens. Maybe not every moment, maybe not every show, but like throughout the experience of playing music, I feel like playing music and learning this form of music and the way we practice it and the way we play it, that for me was my exposure to any kind of spiritual practice. Maybe more than the prayers I may have learned as a child, or more than going into some, a building or a place of worship or whatever. That practice of showing up to sit and play and then to be on stage and be so in the moment. Like nothing makes me be so in the moment as having to be on that like tight wire of being on stage and playing or improvising in that moment in front of people. It just, there's no past and future. You can't be anywhere else except
You're
right
there.
here.
I'll tell you why I asked this question, because most of your shows start with this one spot on you of the bits that I've seen, and when you look at you can tell that you have absolutely nothing to do with anybody else around you than the place that you're in. And I was half expecting that answer, honestly. Yeah,
I'm predictable.
No, you're not. How does one still have this impeccable connect to their homeland without physically being there?
I sometimes wonder if I'm given more credit than is due with that, maybe because of the legacy, the lineage that's in people's subconscious when they see me. So I'm associated with my father somewhere in people's heads. So that's going to just root me in their minds to India and
but
to
even
our
with
art.
your music.
And then my instrument also. You see my instrument and it's like, again, like symbol of India. Like you can't see the sitar and not think this is India. So right there's so much grounding already that happens that I feel like that almost allows me to be more free, to travel further, to play music across more cultures. Again, it just comes back to the same thing. Like having been given that training, it is so rooting, it is so grounding that like it just means that I can explore. And for me as a musician I'm very interested in like looking outwards, in collaborating, in learning, in trying to create like bridges.
Yeah, and I feel like that has a lot to do with the fact that you kind of made a lot of Indian classical music somehow cool enough for it to transcend through ages when it comes to consumption. I'll tell you very honestly, the way I have heard it when I was super, super young is that my parents used to play it in my house on Diwali.
Right.
Every morning.
Yeah.
So that's how I was introduced to it. So my first thought was always, oh, it's music my parents enjoyed.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was something that a lot of people my age kind of thought. And then you just perform at like NH7 where you have all these young people watching and cheering and getting the music that you're playing. How do you bridge that gap, or how do you make this relatability happen which goes beyond ages?
Actually, the type of music I'm playing at NH7 or in a lot of my shows, you can't actually call it classical. You know, for me, I had to make the music relevant to me also first. And it's generational. You know, the people that we heard growing up that our parents were listening to, like those classical masters were like the rock stars of classical music in the 50s and 60s to the younger. They made it cool again then, you know? So I think each generation, like something has to come along and make it feel relevant again.
As a fan, again, do you remember a moment when, because you grew up spending hours every single day rehearsing and practicing the kind of music that was taught to you and your family, then you took it ahead and you made it your own. Do you remember that moment when you suddenly decided that, okay, this is how it's been done in my family for so long, but this is what I want to add on to it?
Yeah, there was a phase. There was a phase in my early to mid-20s where, I made my first 3 albums between 16 and 18 or 19. So I'd released 3 albums by the time I was 19. They were classical. They did quite well, but I felt like my life had this kind of split personality thing going on, where like on one side I was, you know, going to a certain type of parties and listening to a certain kind of music. There was a lifestyle, there was DJs, there was my life, and then I would kind of put all of that away, and I would get dressed up, and I would get on stage, and I would play this other music, which was also a part of me. And after 3 records, I just didn't feel like I could do that again.
And the first 3 records were
purely classical.
Got it.
And there was a 5-year gap before I released Rise. And so for me, that was my 4th record, but it feels like my first baby. Like that was my first baby.
Because that's when you felt like you came into your own.
That was when I wrote, I produced, I spent time like really, like I was traveling the world and playing with musicians I loved. And it just felt like that record came out and it was like, that's who I am today. Like this is my soul in an album.
Are you worried about pushback? Because it comes from generational...
Yeah. I mean, things keep changing. Like at the time, like I remember doing, you know, interviews and stuff. I started doing press when I was like it was 1995. I was 13 and I was doing, and just the idea that I was wearing jeans was so weird to people. Like they'd just never seen a classical musician sat there in their normal day clothes in that way, you know? And it was like, it was so weird to be a teenage girl and to be that and to also be this. So that was really confusing to people. But as time kept going on, obviously I kept doing that and there was pushback. And then the longer I kept doing that, it became normalized.
And we are so glad that you kind of kept doing it and not take the other road which most people would go for. That. And I feel like that's where things change, right? Where you looked at classical music the way you looked at it as a 19-year-old girl and not the way you were taught to look at it by everybody else, which was great.
Yay.
You're teaching at Oxford?
Nice switch there.
Right?
I've just started. It's a short-term thing. They have visiting professors that come and do like a term or a year. And so I'm a visiting professor in music business for this year of schooling. So I'm doing like a couple of lectures, workshops.
Did you imagine that though?
No, it's wild. Like I can technically call myself an Oxford professor.
You are. Why technically?
I didn't go to college. Like
exactly why?
This is nuts.
This is great. It's a case study for Oxford. But you haven't done any classes yet.
I've done one like open lecture, and then like the next thing we're talking about doing is more like a workshop with musicians.
What was your first lesson? Like, what was the first thing you wanted everyone to know?
Just a little bit more about our music. The way I think, like the thing that's really fascinating to people is when they're looking from abroad or from like a classical music lens or from is our music's actually very weirdly unique in the fact that it's like classical and historical and improvised at the same time. That doesn't really exist anywhere. You know, you have classical music where people are playing masterpieces that are hundreds of years old or not, but they're written on a page, and there's a sanctity to that. You don't deviate from
like don't
the composition.
Improvise.
And then you have genres like jazz, where it's about freshness and chemistry and fire and improvisation. And the fact that our music has both is very confusing to people. Like, what do you mean you're playing something that's centuries old? How are you improvising at the same time? When is it lifting from this raga into your story? It's very hard for people to... So just to start with that baseline, and then from there we're going to go deeper with different, like, people who are at different levels of music. But that was like an open starting point.
That is very, very exciting. So I finished college with absolutely no interest in academia.
Yeah, sure.
I was very, very young, but I knew what I wanted to do.
What was your thing at the time?
I wanted to be a radio jockey.
Nice.
And I studied mass media, which is the closest that could get to being a radio jockey. And I remember I took these career counseling sessions where my counselor sat my parents down and said that, listen, make sure she gets through like college, because if you give her one chance to run, she's going to run. Like, she's not going to study.
Right.
So these are moments where I really feel like if I ever get a chance to kind of be in a classroom where you kind of talk about all these things, it'll be such a pleasure, honestly. So I'm really looking forward, and I'm very jealous of everybody who gets to do that. I mean, they also got into Oxford, so like you have an upper hand there. But you are composing now. You're doing...
well...
What is the term for it?
Scoring?
Scoring,
composing?
yes.
Yeah, I was
like that. I heard this term right before we started. How can I forget this? Yes.
Scoring.
Yes, you did. You worked on A Suitable Boy with Veera and I right now.
Did.
When do you do more work with?
I love what I do, but I really want to move more into scoring. And I feel like having had a couple of experiences of scoring actually whet my appetite. And I was like, oh, this is actually amazing. This is really cool. It's a different kind of collaboration. You're serving a different type of story. And also trying to realize someone else's vision. Like, all of that's really exciting.
Yeah, because all these years you've been composing for what your vision has been. And now suddenly you're going to speak and add music to someone else's story, which is
what was so funny was, like, the first thing I scored was this incredible silent film. If you've never seen it, it's called Shiraz. It was amazing.
I've not seen it.
It was made in like next step.
I've not heard it though.
It's from 1927. It's one of the first 3 feature films ever made in India.
Oh.
And yet it is made at this scale that you cannot imagine. It was like a German, British, and Indian co-production.
1927.
1927. There's 10,000 extras. There's battle scenes. There's court palace. There's intrigue. There's murder. There's like there's kissing first, like black and white kissing, which is amazing. But it's just this incredible piece of work. And I was asked to score it when the British Film Institute were going to restore the print. And like an idiot, I was like, you know what? I've done albums where I write for myself. The bit I don't know how to do is work with a director. So I'm going to say yes to this silent film because no one who made this is alive anymore. So I'm just kind of being left to this. And it was actually a great way to start on one side. But the other side, it showed me how little I knew, because I said yes to scoring a silent film, which means that however long the movie is how long your full score is as compared to music. So it's like, you know, a 2-hour film, 2 hours of music. And everyone else was like, how are you doing this? And I was like, I didn't know. I didn't know. So I would love to score for something.
I thought it would go silent every now and then,
something with conversation would be great.
I thought they would mime, but they didn't.
So that was.
So you played music for 2
hours.
So
I started with that, so I can do something else if I've done that.
We really hope that you do.
I'd love to, and it's nice to say that. Like, I feel like I just need to own that I want to, because I was just
just put it out.
Like, there was that whole Oscars weekend a few weeks ago where, like, they had these beautiful South Asian celebrations, and it was so wonderful to be there taking part. But everyone I was meeting, like, there was a bunch of people that I would meet, and they would go, I love listening to you so much. Like, and I'm not kidding. 7, 8, 9 people said, you know, I listen to you when I'm writing my scenes. Like, it's so beautiful to hear your music. It fits so well. And I'm like, you know, call me when you get to the point, actually. And they were like, oh, and you could just see their face. Like, they didn't quite think of me that way. They thought of me as a touring musician. So I was like, hi, okay, I need to just say that I want to do it.
Let's get coffee. Oh, this is damn fun. But we're really, really looking forward to you doing more scoring with films on OTT. I mean, I'm very proud to be a part of this whole content creation actor universe in India right now, because I feel like
it's exciting times.
It can't be a better time to be an actor or a content creator, especially digitally in India. So I'm very happy to be here. You were nominated 9 times for the Grammys.
It sounds wild, right? Like, as
9
a number.
It's a lot of numbers.
9 is a big number.
Yeah.
Every time it becomes more, I think, wow, this is a big number. You know, it's pretty crazy. But
We're very close to double digit.
So far, 0 wins. So the number of nominations can keep getting bigger, and that's great.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with that kind of, like, when this news comes to you, how do you just kind of,
I mean, obviously,
by the ninth time,
in
has
some
it
way
become,
it gets easier.
Yeah.
On the other side, it can also get more frustrating. Like, it depends. I'm human, you know, all the feelings exist.
Do you ever have a point when, you know, when you hit all these milestones and you started super early, which means you hit them much before you kind of hit a place of the understanding that you have right now, where you're very comfortable and not exactly dependent on these validation pointers?
That's such a good question. It's hard. I mean, I get addicted to like adrenaline, for example, like just the high of all this stuff. You know, it can be a very heightened life, like when you go on tour and you're performing every night, and then like just coming down from that into normalcy can be quite difficult, not in a mental sense, but in like a physical energy sense.
Because
also.
it's a
You're
shocker,
so wired,
right?
and it's so like, and so that can be quite hard. Like just learning how to really come down again and again, and just do that work to come down to normal. And so with stuff like that as well, it can be hard because it just feels so big. You know, it really does just feel larger than life, and just like a normal Tuesday after that can just feel depressing. You know? Speaking
of normal Tuesdays, how do you? There's this one side of you where we see that, oh my God, she's touring the world and she's this performer, and then you have lakhs and lakhs of people who gather to listen to her perform. But there's a whole business side of things to this. How do you kind of balance your passion with the business side of things? Because I feel like they have to go hand in hand, or it's not going to be sustainable.
It's a difficult thing to do. I think that, you know, all the cliches about art and artists exist for a reason. You know, and there is a certain type of hat or thinking hat that I put on when I'm in that creative space. And then I really have to actively switch into thinking from like a business and practical sense about it as well. So I just try and create that separation in my head. You know, like the last few years outside of India, I manage myself also. I don't have a manager right now. And I just made a choice a few years ago that I was like, I don't need someone to do the things that I can do myself, and then I'll allocate the things that I need, you know. And so I'm my own manager as well. So this last couple of years has been like a deep dive into learning about the music business side of it, for better and for worse. Like I make mistakes, and then I'm like, oh, that's an area that I need to allocate to someone else, you know. And but I'm also really enjoying the ownership of that. Like I think sometimes as an artist, you can feel a little bit powerless about all that side of it. It can feel a little confusing, murky, and I just feel like I just want to know. I just want to know what all of it is, and it feels good.
Which again, I'm so grateful. I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure that you get from like, oh no. Like you have to walk in with an entourage. Like you need to have these people around you.
This stuff I don't understand.
Exactly like, my point. Like, oh no, you have to get styled. You know, you have to have people. And that gets overwhelming. So it's very inspiring for me, honestly, that you actually being at where you are, say that you didn't want to have a manager.
Like, I've worked with a stylist maybe that many times in my whole life, like somewhere in that range across like 25 years. It's like, you don't have to do that stuff. The idea that you have to do that stuff is quite upsetting, actually.
It is.
I think like anything that helps, do it. Like if it helps you because it frees your headspace to do what you need to do, to have someone else think about something, and you can do that, great. But the idea that you need to kind of keep up some kind of image or status, that stuff's a mess. But I think that's part of like I've been lucky to kind of live a sort of traveling life, like where I don't necessarily live here in Bombay, where maybe I would have been in the scene a little bit more, and then it's easy to get caught up. Whereas I go and live like a very normal life where I'm just raising kids and cooking dinner and doing the laundry and like whatever else, whatever else. And it's just, it's nice to kind of step into this and have a play.
And then go back
to the normal Tuesday again.
Normal Tuesday with taxes. Let's end this with
taxes.
What have you been working on right now? What's been up?
I'm writing new music, which feels deeply exciting, as it always does. But I'm writing some new music that I'll be releasing later in the year, and getting back into slightly more intensive touring, touch something. That it feels like pre-pandemic is the last time I did like a massive proper actual tour, you know. So just getting back into like that feels really wonderful.
Okay, good. Also, this is a question. So I work very closely with the UNDP as the climate change ambassador. So there's this one question that I always like asking people who are inspiring, who are in places of influence and power and impact. What's the one sustainable change big or small, that you've made in your life that has kind of helped you a little bit more towards goal of?
The one thing I feel like that has been like a bigger household shift for me is like I just started ordering all the time. Like anytime you need something, I get online and order it, and in
it
2
will come in
seconds
these big boxes.
Yes, so you want sellotape, and like the sellotape comes wrapped in plastic, and then in a box, and then in a box, and I was like, this is obscene. I feel sick like when I see even if I'm recycling, but just this many boxes. And so like I was like, you know what, I just need to take that one step further and like, is it on the corner store? Is it something I can get another way? Can I order it from a different, like there's a lot of shops in the UK, I don't know about here, where you can order it to your local store. And so you're still doing the online shop, and then I could get 5, 6, 7 different things, and then within that week I go get all of it from the shop instead of like 17 packages showing up at home. I think my waste from the house has just gone reduced down by like 100%. Like I don't even know. Like it's crazy from that.
Okay, good. No, that's a huge step. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
I'm very happy that you're here. How long are you in India for?
Just for a couple more days.
Oh, and then you go back to the UK.
But I'll be back and forth.
Okay, good. All right. So we'll see you soon performing and then also scoring.
Yes.
So it's going to be a lot of fun.
There we go.
So yeah, that was Anoushka Shankar. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. If you like it, make sure you give it a big fat thumbs up. I'm going to come up with new videos every Tuesday and Saturday. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you should do that. It's free.
Hey.
Absolutely. I'm going to see you soon until we meet. Love, love.